Okay, Mr. Franklin, can I just check? Are we live streaming yet?
We are, Inspector, live streaming now.
Okay, that's great. Thanks very much. In which case then, it's now 2 o'clock, and so I resume the hearings. Yes, I don't think there's a great deal of point doing introductions, apart from me to say, Mr. Stafford, that I'm Simon Bark and I'm the planning inspector.
I should say I was in some of the earlier sessions for Taylor Wimpey, so I think I know the protocol.
Even last week's sessions now feel like such a long time ago. Okay, good. Yeah, I think, frankly, unless you've got a background noise problem, I'm happy for everyone to permanently have their microphones off, if that might help, and we can probably also do away with the raise hand facility as well, and simply speak like normal people when we are ready to do just that.
So when you said microphones off, did you actually mean microphones on?
My apologies. Yes, I meant yes, not for the first time. I meant the exact opposite of what I said. Yes, microphones on. Sorry. Okay. So then, to issue 25.1 in relation to site BA2. The soundness problem there, as I understand it, relates to the delineation, does it, of the greenbelt boundary, and whether or not that was a defensible boundary as required by national policy. Is that about the size of it, Mr. Smith?
Yeah, that's correct. The boundary in the submitted plan was drawn along a hedgerow boundary that's no longer there. It's sort of, you can see it on the OS map underlying the main mods. There is a line shown sort of 3/4 of a way across what we're now proposing as BA2. That's no longer there. It would have been an arbitrary line across a field. So we proposed at the original hearings that allocation boundary be extended to the bypass and then the footpath along the southern edge, because they're the clear features in line with NPPF para 85.
Yeah. Okay. So in the council's view, then, those are the most logical. That's the most logical place to put it. The most appropriate place to put it.
Exactly.
And none of that leads to any additional dwellings. It's still 200, isn't it? I think.
That's correct. Yeah, no change in the dwelling estimate.
In relation then to the additional land, that's deliverable?
Yes, it is. It's all in the ownership of the county council. Obviously, once you take access of the main road into the remainder of BA2, you can logically get access into this additional land, and there's no additional constraints arising from the inclusion of that land.
Okay, and when you say constraints, do you also mean impacts as well?
Yes.
Impacts.
So yeah, they're all as per our Matter 10 statement for the remainder of the site.
Okay, 25.2 then. Yeah, in relation to BA2, that is currently green belt land, isn't it? This new.
That's correct, yes.
Okay, and the exceptional circumstances, presumably you're going to point me to those that related to the original BA2.
Exactly, yes. And then, as we've already touched on in the opening minutes, the points around making a defensible, robust boundary as well.
And on to then the nature and extent of the harm.
Again, as for the remainder of the site, we've identified a moderate contribution to purposes and therefore a moderate harm if that additional land was added in. Let's say, given the removal of the hedgerow, that's all sort of one field on the ground, so same impacts as previously identified.
Okay, and question C then, Mr. Smith.
Again, that refers back to our statement and the policy around basically making sure there's robust boundaries around the edge of the site, and obviously with the dual carriageway providing the most obvious defensible boundary, any impacts are contained within that line. So we have the first criterion for policy BA2, creation of an appropriate defensible boundary along the southeastern perimeter of the site.
Sorry, criteria?
The first criterion under policy BA2, they're bullet points, so they're not numbered.
Okay. Okay, question D.
Yes, the land beyond the site would continue to serve the purposes, obviously beyond the dual carriageway bypass, which is the defensible barrier along that side of Baldock. You're into more open countryside, and the area to the south as well is sort of undeveloped, goes up and over the Western Hills. So both those areas would continue to contribute.
Just remind me, is the dual carriageway washed over Greenbelt?
No, we've drawn the boundary along the
other side.
The inside effectively. So I'm sorry, yes. So the dual carriageway itself would be within the Greenbelt. We've drawn the line along the inside western edge.
Okay. And question E.
Yes, as per our statement, again, any further review in that direction would require reaching quite a firm defensive boundary. And as we say there, the review and proposed release would extend Baldock to its logical maximum in that direction.
And finally, F. I'm not going to ask you G because I think that's been well covered already.
Yes, certainly the answer is yes again. Baldock's obviously one of the main towns in our settlement hierarchy, so in releasing land at this location, we're directing development towards the top tier of our settlement hierarchy.
Okay, thank you for that. Anything that you wanted to add, Mr. Stafford?
No, nothing to add as per our recent submissions, really. Logical extensions for all the reasons that Mr. Smith has outlined.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. I don't have anything else. And on other issues that have been raised, I'll deal with those as I have them in writing. Then let us go to sites BA3 and 4. I think it's logical to take those two together. Particularly as they would physically be together.
Yes, that's correct. Yes, great.
Okay, so this is through main mod 387. Yeah, this one's a little bit more complicated, isn't it, in terms of the background and the context?
Yes.
Can you just remind me of that, Mr. Smith?
Yeah. So have you got the main mod sort of before and after maps in front of you? Because it's probably easiest to do it by reference to.
I do. I have those.
ED 175 at the back there, if that helps, sir.
Yeah, no, I do have them. I was going to say, but I have them on my computer screen rather than on a handy piece of paper. So it involves a bit of scrolling back and forth. Yeah. But yeah, okay.
So as you can see in the plan as submitted, BA3 lying to the south of sort of Yeomanry Drive and what's known as the Clothall Common Estate, and then BA4, which effectively cut across between land that was already excluded from the Greenbelt. So in the plan submitted, you can possibly just about see on the map underneath, there's kind of a rectangular shape at the top of what's marked as Allane Way, which was already excluded from the Greenbelt. And then that's the western half effectively of BA4. And then the eastern half of BA4 that sort of circles around towards the road, that was within the Greenbelt. And through discussions at the original hearings, we talked about the southern link road that would link from the Royston Road to the top of BA4 round to BA3. Obviously, we've had discussions about Greenbelt and exceptional circumstances, and frankly, just the nature of how that site is now being brought forward. It made a lot of sense to kind of tidy up the allocations in this area. And obviously between BA4 and BA3, we had a fairly large patch of just white land, which we were proposing was within the settlement boundary, but to which there were no specific policy criteria being applied. So all of that in combination, as we've set out in paragraphs 23 and 24 of ED 175, it just made sense to look again at those boundaries. If we deal with BA4 first, if you look at the after map, that's now a sort of much simpler rectangle that's already excluded from the Greenbelt. So just in terms of your considerations, you can take that out of the equation in terms of exceptional circumstances. That's an undeveloped site within an existing boundary.
Which bit is that, sorry?
Sorry, if you look at the after map, you've got BA4, which is now pretty much a rectangle. There's a blue line, or there's a line separating it from BA3.
Yeah.
So in italic writing underneath the Royston Road, there's the type that says Icknield Way, so between the words Icknield and Way. If you're looking at the same base map, there's a line coming down roughly in line with the existing building line further down. So that's the revised BA4. So that's I believe it was a reserved school site for a primary school in the Clothall Common Estate that was never used. So that's
so the new BA4. Did you say is not currently Greenbelt?
Correct. The settlement boundary already goes around and includes that land as part of the settlement.
Okay.
So that hopefully aids your deliberations, and that it makes that distinct from the remainder of the land to which all the Greenbelt and exceptional circumstances question apply. And then so for BA3, we've incorporated that sort of remaining half of BA4 plus all the intervening land, because that is through where the link road will pass, and it also allows us to set some criteria around the landscape bund that's kind of in the point of the extended BA3 up near the junction with the dual carriageway, so up the north-east corner.
Does that bund sort of follow Royston Road?
It cuts fairly southwards from Royston Road, so opposite where the property that says hillside, roughly, it sort of comes down. It's a lot of this sort of excavation spoil, I think, from when they dug out the bypass, and I think there was a bit of concern that if left as White's land, I think we discussed in the original hearings, we're sort of relying on the goodwill of the county council as a responsible landowner to not come along and say, can we build houses on it? It's much easier to bring it within the allocation and set some clear criteria about what is and isn't expected in that area. So yes, so overall, again, no change to the combined housing numbers across BA3 and BA4, but we've just split them. So as submitted, BA3 was 200 and BA4 was 95, so 295 in total. Whereas as modified, BA3 would be 245 and BA4 would reduce to 50, so still 295 in total, but just a different articulation between the two sites, a different split. And finally, in practical terms, that arrangement also just reflects how the county council are now proposing to bring those sites forward. So BA4 as a standalone scheme, separate to and probably in advance of BA3. And we put all of that under the badge of effectiveness.
Yeah, required for certainty.
Yes.
To give certainty.
Yeah, and that's listed out again at paragraph 25 of ED 175. Which identifies the factors that we've discussed. So bringing the route of the link road within a single allocation, distinguishing between land outside of and currently outside of and within the green belt, and to provide additional criteria for what was white land in the submitted plan.
Okay, and in terms of then I'm going on to question B, and being the one about deliverability.
Yes. Again, that's all within the ownership of the county council. There's no sort of new access proposals above and beyond what you've already examined at matter 10. As I say, it's about making sure the policy criteria can be applied to all of the relevant lands. And similarly, it's therefore deliverable to pick up your part 3.
The county is still a willing landowner, Mr. Stafford.
Yeah, I think that's just the key point to reiterate, really, sir, is the deliverability point. It's all under the same ownership and a commitment to deliver.
Okay, just on B3, provision of necessary infrastructure and services and any environmental or other constraints.
Yeah, as we said, there's no sort of new environmental constraints or impacts beyond those previously examined.
And does the new land give rise to any new infrastructure requirements?
No, there's reference to the link road already within the policy. We discussed it at the original hearings.
Yeah.
And dwelling numbers are unchanged. So obviously, impact in terms of education and other sort of population-based services are all as previously examined across the two sites.
Okay, thank you. Question C then, likely impacts of including the new land? I think you've answered that already.
Yes, refer to previous.
25.2 then, the exceptional circumstances.
Again, this is as previously set out. Obviously, in this instance, unlike BA2, we propose removal of the land as part of the originally submitted plan. So we've drawn the boundary all the way up the bypass. So there's no additional land being taken out of the greenbelt as a result of this modification.
And what about the contribution and harm question?
And both sites previously identified as moderate contribution, and therefore by extension, moderate harm, and the same would apply to this land.
D, question D.
Again, obviously the policy criteria for BA3 would now apply to the entirety of that land, and that includes, among other matters, proposals to be informed by a site-specific landscape assessment, which would help to inform boundary treatment and screening. And also through the modifications, we've required that the existing bunding is maintained or reprofiled to effectively to stop housing being stuck on top of it, because clearly that would have a far more significant impact than if we didn't.
And question E, the greenbelt boundary being capable of enduring. You're going to tell me about the bypass and other things.
I am, yes.
And Royston Road, isn't it?
And it's mainly the bypass. In this instance, the greenbelt boundary runs along the 505 and sort of keeps going beyond that.
Yeah. No, I get it.
I see.
And question F, Mr. Smith.
As per the answer for BA2, again, this site's a very important one in terms of meeting overall supply, directing it to one of the main towns in the district.
And again, I don't think I need to ask you, G. Is there anything that you wanted to add, Mr. Stafford? It's been a very easy ride for you.
Yeah, no, there's relatively straightforward amends, really. I think, again, just echoing what Mr. Smith has said. So these are logical amendments to the to strengthen the greenbelt boundaries and facilitate development as intended. You know, there's no really sort of points towards the greenbelt boundaries being a key consideration, rather than, for example, upping numbers by including this land, is to facilitate the development at the same overall quantum of development as originally proposed.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any other questions. Is there anything to add?
No, it was only if you had any other questions arising out of the other statements that you've received. But
no. Okay. In which case, unless there's anything else that we need to pick up on before we all go home or elsewhere. Very good. Okay. In which case, then I make it 14:26. I adjourn the hearing to resume tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.